So, in chapter 1169, it appears that I was right, and Ragnir is in fact a Zoan. I still think that he could be a squirrel Zoan of some sort, as a reference to the death squirrels that appear in One Piece film Strong World concept art and in the video game One Piece Odyssey. With that being said, the reason why this will be so fascinating is because if it is indeed a squirrel Zoan, it will be the oldest animal Zoan that we have in the series so far. Because out of all of the inanimate objects and substances that have eaten Zoan fruits and have become living beings, none of them are particularly old. A lot of them are most likely at least a decade old, looking at characters like, say, Cerberus, the Sword of Figurlin Shamrock, or Smiley, who was toxic gas that ate a Zoan fruit and was only 4 years old upon the time of his death. With that being said, this is why I think at the start of the arc with Iscat that we were reintroduced to the concept of Chopper having the ability of zoolinguism, the ability to talk to animals, because now Chopper could probably give us a lot of context, most likely about the mural through Ragnir, because it's being highly suggested that Ragnir has been around for a long time and is the most experienced inanimate object Zoan that we have seen in the series, because I think that's the reason why he's able to move while in an inanimate state, because of course he's been this way perhaps for centuries at this point. But in addition, considering that Ragnir could possibly be a squirrel, even if he's a mythical squirrel, he most likely can't speak the human language. Therefore, you would need Chopper to translate. This is highly significant because I would think that this is the first time in which Ragnir's speech can be deciphered by an individual. So, Chopper would most likely be the translator in order for Ragnir to get his point across. However, with that being said too, I do think Ragnir is going to be kind of funny. And the reason why I said that is because I think Ragnir is going to be Ratatoskr, the squirrel in Norse mythology that ran up and down the world tree, spreading rumors and gossip amongst the eagle and the nidhogg at the top and the bottom of the world tree. So I think Ratatoskr is going to be Ragnir in One Piece. With that being said too, I think it too will be an upstart and a gossiper, which will make it very much like Usopp. But on the subject of gossipers, why don't you gossip up that subscribe button if you are enjoying the content so far? Click that like button if you are enjoying the content so far, and ring the bell so you never miss a Poly P Works video. Also, if you can find it, please hit the hype button. It really helps a lot. But to continue, but I don't think it will be as ugly as the Death Squirrel. I think if you're talking about merchandise, right, and how Chopper is the merchandise character for One Piece. For example, if Chopper is the Hello Kitty of One Piece, I think Ragnir could be the Kurami. And if you don't know, Kurami is kind of like an evil Hello Kitty, as she's also a Sanrio character. So I think their relationship will be like that. And that's why I do think at the start of this arc, we were reintroduced to Chopper's ability to talk to animals through Iscat, because that's going to come up again once Ragnir reveals itself. And I think this has always been a very good point about Chopper, because we got this way back in Drum Island through the whole Alabasta arc, because his presence did in fact make Karoo a character. And that's the cool part about having Chopper around, because he can make animal characters into real characters with their own ambitions and personalities through him translating for them. And for the longest time now, that really hasn't been put into effect in any meaningful way. So I think now, if Loki does join the crew, this will be in effect all the time. Now, with that being said, I do think Loki himself has eaten the shrinking fruit, some sort of canonical equivalent to the mini fruit. Now, the reason why I think this is so important is because with Loki being a huge giant and Ragnar being a giant hammer, I think the mini fruit in this context, or whatever the shrinking power is called, can boost the density or strength of people and objects by condensing the mass present. So with Ragnar being a living being, technically, I think by shrinking Ragnar down along with himself, he boosts the strength of the hammer and boosts the strength of himself. So both are extraordinarily effective in combat. Now, you're talking about the electricity that Ragnar generates. This could be because in One Piece, the Ratatasker fruit allows the user to generate lightning. Because what's interesting is that in many illustrations of what Ratatasker could look like, both in Norse mythology and in Marvel Comics, it is depicted with a horn. So maybe it can generate electricity from its horn. What I'm saying is that Ragnar will most likely be One Piece's PIKACHU, or Emolga, because in being a squirrel and having the ability to levitate while being a hammer, I do think it's some sort of magical flying squirrel as well. So we have a magic horned flying squirrel that can generate electricity. And maybe in being a flying squirrel, it could just levitate off the ground and use itself even while in its hammer state without having to actually have any mechanical motion to dictate its movement. So that's why it can just float and levitate around and return to Loki like how Thor's hammer does in Marvel Comics. However, bringing things back to Strong World again, in Strong World, one of the more important animals was a giant electricity producing bird named Billy that looked like a cross between a chicken, a duck, and a peacock. Luffy rode on this animal during his fight with Shiki. So what I'm saying is that most likely Ragnar is the canonical equivalent to Billy in One Piece proper. And with it most likely being a Balfian squirrel, or a squirrel that is at least the size of an Balfian animal, or perhaps a tad smaller, Luffy could probably ride on Ragnar as well when it's in its squirrel state. And it could probably imitate Billy in this way, because most likely Ragnar is some sort of flying squirrel, if Ratatasker is being presented as a horned flying squirrel in One Piece. So, with that being said, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Polypede. What?